Hey everyone, it's Jack here, TalkNorwichCity. Welcome back to another video. It has been a chaotic few weeks. I hope you've caught your breath. We've had the sacking of Johnanes Hoff Thorup. We've had Jack Wilshere taking charge of his first game as Norwich City interim manager. We'll be getting on to it later in the video whether he becomes the permanent manager. We've had an interview with Delia Smith and Michael Wynne-Jones. How did that happen? Not too sure. It's on the channel now. That was a really nice chat with them. 30 years, close to 30 years they'd Norwich City Football Club, a remarkable tenure. And now we're looking ahead to the final game of the season, final home game of the season against already relegated Cardiff. It's a complete dead rubber. Both teams know their destiny at the end of this season. But because of the recent news in the last few weeks, it makes it a very interesting dynamic for Norwich, and there's lots to talk about, so stay tuned. I am also delighted to welcome Match Bingo as today's sponsor. They're back on TNC. You guys know about Match Bingo. They've partnered with us lots of times in the past. They combine two of my favourite things in life, sports betting and bingo, in one delightful app. You can play along with your friends, you can have lines, full houses, and follow along for all of the games. They do the Premier League, they do the Champions League, they do EFL, they do darts. Download the app, the link's in the description, the QR code is on screen now. We'll be talking about Match Bingo lots in the coming weeks and months. I'm on there a lot, playing along. I would love to see some of you as well. So click the link in the description or scan the QR code and I'll see you over there. More info on Match Bingo coming in the future weeks. I couldn't believe, but they've paid over £200,000, yes, that's right, to winners already on the app. That's a lot of money. Let's get into Norwich City. Wow, where do we start? Johnanes Hoff Thorup has come out with his first kind of comments, his first media since being sacked as Norwich City head coach. I think he's been speaking to the Danish press, and there were some very interesting comments in there. We put the graphics out on the TNC socials, the EDPs cover it. Everyone's covered it. I'm sure you've seen the quotes already. They came out on Wednesday. I've had a little time to think about them and dissect some of them. Johnanes Hoff Thorup said, in the communication from the start, if the communication from the start had been that we were going to reach the top six and be one of the playoff clubs, we would have probably made some different decisions along the way. We wouldn't have necessarily played with the youngest team that Norwich have had in generations, as we did in one of the games where we had an average age of 23 and a half years old, which is younger than some of the teams I had for FC Nordsjælland. He said, I know that Jack's terms of employment well, so I know that at some point he would take the step up as a head coach, and we also had made a good plan together with him. If it had been Glenn who had taken over, I'd probably have raised my eyebrows a little bit more than once, but not when it is Jack. The premise for bringing him in was for his next step in his career, where he would move on from Norwich, or Glenn and I would move on from Norwich, so he could become head coach. We've discussed in a couple of videos already, and I know there's been a lot of chatter around who will be the next head coach of Norwich City, and it's always felt like, maybe not the easy option's probably the wrong word, but a natural option would be to make Jack Wilshere the permanent head coach. I think the concerns around Jack Wilshere are that he's inexperienced, he's never managed a senior team before, he's had a great education through Arsenal and did a good job with their under-18s. I don't really know his kind of remit as assistant head coach here, but he's clearly highly rated. The problem is Johnanes Hoff Thorup's ultimate, I think, failing was a complete lack of experience in the Championship. That was clear. I think his philosophy and his way of trying to play was good, and ultimately I think he fell apart because of certain management pieces and an inability to transition through a Championship season. It was the last 2 months of form that ultimately got him sacked. So Jack Wilshere will have the same, I guess, frailties in terms of that lack of experience in the Championship. Very young manager, much like Johannes. So in terms of profiles, quite similar. The benefit here for Jack Wilshere is that he was brought in by Ben Napper, and he saw Norwich City as a stepping stone almost into a head coach role. He said that he thinks he's ready for managing a senior football team. He wants to manage a senior football team. He wants to manage Norwich City. He said that publicly. So the decision lies with Ben Napper. He has a man in interim charge that wants the job, or does he go for someone else, a Russ Martin, a Gary O'Neill? Not saying that they're necessarily wanting the job or even available for the job. But there are, of course, as always, other options out there. The good thing with Jack Wilshere, he's been integrated into the group. I think it's clear that the players like him. We don't really know what his playing style is. The opening game in his tenure against Middlesbrough was a positive one, and certainly one of the better away performances we've seen this season. But this weekend presents a real opportunity for him. This weekend presents an opportunity at home in front of, I would say, nearly a capacity crowd against a side where you're going to be dominant. Cardiff are already down. Who knows what kind of Cardiff will show up? I assume morale in that dressing room isn't high. So this is an opportunity to take dominance and really put on a display for the home fans. We've not seen a good performance at Carrow Road for what feels like an absolute eternity. And if Wilshere can turn up, deliver something really special, you've got buy-in. I've spoken a lot this season about buy-in. It's so important when you're going through a project. You need buy-in from your senior management, being Zoe Webber, Mark Atanasios, etc. You need buy-in from the fans. That's almost the most critical part. Once you lose the fans, that relationship to rebuild is almost impossible. And I think, having already seen the early stages of Jack Wilshere, it seems like he has buy-in. He's a name. He's exciting. He's young. He's almost up. Well, he is a complete unknown in terms of the potential of what he has in management. So who knows? I would be confident at this stage to say that I think Jack Wilshere will be the next permanent head coach of Norwich City. Is that the right decision? Who knows? It's certainly a risky one. And what is for sure is Ben Napper's job almost feels in a really critical place at this stage. He's made a bold decision on Johnanes Hoff Thorup that hasn't worked in terms of bringing him in, selling a long-term project and sacking him off after under a season. And whatever this next manager will be, whether it's Jack Wilshere or someone else, that's also a bold call. The second decision has to be right. You can get the first one wrong. The second one, if you get that wrong, you're starting to get a bit concerned. So I'm really looking forward to this game against Cardiff. I'm really interested to see these next steps of the Norwich City project under Ben Napper. I think Ben Napper's a good person. I think he's switched on. I think he's an excellent communicator. I think he has respect of his peers. And I think he's got the ability to create something special. The thing that concerns me slightly is I think he needs support around him. He needs a chairman. He needs a CEO. I think he needs that seniority above him or around him in order to facilitate some of these decision makings. That's where I think we're falling down at the moment. Mark Atanasio will be well aware of that. He is an exceptional businessman who's led huge institutions throughout his career. He knows the chess pieces and the bits of the puzzle that need to be fitted here. So hopefully we see some of that. I'm looking at a McNally or a Ben Kensel in recent years, and go further back, you'll be able to find more examples of that. Someone who can come in with seniority, with business experience in a sporting arena, and really kind of put the pieces in place and let Ben Napper concentrate on a football side of things. Because I think at that, he's very, very talented. Just finally on Johnanes Hoff Thorup, I'm sure there'll be more chatter about him. It was interesting, his comments around the expectations and maybe him doing things differently. Johannes will have learned so much from this experience. I thought it was very interesting. He said if I'm ever managing abroad again, that he would bring a bigger team with him rather than just Glenn Riddlesholme, who he hadn't worked with before. He would bring his own team in. I think You think, don't you, with head coaches that it's just like that 90 minutes on a game day, but it's the whole week leading up. There is so much that goes into this, and I think ultimately he probably felt quite exposed on what was a mammoth project to oversee. I'm still really gutted it didn't work out for Johannes. I wanted it to work. What was the communication around expectations set properly by the club? I don't know. None of us are privy to those conversations. I think it was alarming that and we go back to this point around that Portsmouth game when Johannes was asked about Zoe Webber's comments of this season being a failing because we hadn't reached top 6. They were comments penned in the programme, and Johannes almost seemed baffled that that was the expectation. Chris Gorham raised a good point on Twitter. He said on the 28th of March, Johnanes Hoff Thorup said that we still have a chance of the playoffs. And then on the 30th of April, Johannes says he didn't think the playoffs were a target for Norwich City this season. I guess they're two different things. Thinking that the playoffs were an option compared to the playoffs being the target that you will be judged on this season are two different things. Norwich were more than talented. Norwich had the squad in order to compete for the top 6 this season, and ultimately it was the past 2 months that let him down. What was it, 1 win in 10, 1 win in 12, something like that. That's relegation form. If this season had have been extended, or we had 4 more games this season, Norwich would have been in a massive relegation scrap, and that's not good enough when you've got Josh Sargent, Borja Sainz, Angus Gunn, Marcelino Núñez in the team. That's simply not good enough. So a decision's been made. We will see if it was the right or the wrong one. It's always easy with hindsight. I think Jack Wilshere will be the next permanent head coach of Norwich City. A big thank you to Match Bingo for sponsoring today's video. I will link them down in the description, and you can scan the QR code as well. We will be playing along with Match Bingo over the next few months, so definitely worth downloading the app, giving it a scout, and see what you think. And yeah, I'll see you all very soon. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. Bye-bye.